Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first State of Nurse Wellness Roundtable. This is a conversation about, not a conversation about individual resilience or self-care and isolation. Today is about systems, leadership, equity, and accountability, and how nurse wellness is supported or challenged across our state. As we talk about nurse wellness, we are doing so in the context of a very real pressures such as chronic staffing shortages, increasing workplace violence, moral distress, and sustained burnout that continues to shape our nurses' daily experiences. I am Dr. Wendy Garvin Mayo. I created this roundtable because nurse wellness must be treated with the same seriousness as workforce planning, patient safety, and quality outcomes. This roundtable is intentionally interactive. Throughout the discussion, three live polls will be launched and it will appear on your screen. So please engage in real time. We will also encourage you to use the chat to reflect, react, and add your voice. Many of you have submitted questions. Thank you so much in advance, and those questions have been integrated into our discussion. So this is a shared conversation and your participation matters. So thank you so much for being here. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsors. I want to thank the Connecticut Nurse Wellness Project, WinWell, and the Stress Blueprint for helping to elevate nurse wellness as a statewide priority. All right, so today's discussion is part of a broader effort to understand nurse wellness across Connecticut. Following this roundtable, the Connecticut Nurse Wellness Project will be launching a statewide nurse wellness survey to capture the experiences behind these conversations we're going to have today. And with that, I want to start off by just introducing our contributors. We have Dr. Stacy Bentel, who is a Director of Nursing Services at the Connecticut Department of Children and Services. She's also the Chief Executive Officer of Bentel Healthcare Consulting. We have Dr. Tina Loarte Rodriguez, who is the Executive Director at the Connecticut Center for Nursing Workforce. We have Dr. Maria Kroll, who is the Executive Director of Healthcare Programs at Southern Connecticut State University. We have Dr. Tori Murtha, who is the Director of Patient Services, Ambulatory Oncology at Yale New Haven Hospital. And last but not least, we have Tanya Ibrie, who is the co-founder and Chief Executive Officer for Power Up Nursing. And with that, ladies, thank you so much for being here and dedicating your time. This roundtable is broken out into segments, and we're going to kick off by talking about where are nurses struggling, even though we have programs that exist. Because one of the themes that we have heard around nurse wellness is that it looks different depending on where nurses work. So I want to start off with Tanya.
Oh,
In your work, where are we still seeing nurses struggle, even though organizations, technically have wellness programs? Where are you seeing nurses struggle in your work?
it's funny. We go into every single hospital, every nursing school, every organization has really spent a lot of money and a lot of time on wellness and burnout prevention. And here they are willing to talk to us. And the reason why they're willing to talk to us is because there seems to be a wide gap between engagement, getting people to come out for a session on renewal, and then practical application. So people will come out and they'll say, yeah, this will work for others. This won't work for me. There seems to be, and I'm not a nurse, so I'm going to say this and hopefully not get anybody angry at me. I listen to nurses, have for 30 some years in every business and every outreach program. And they will say the nurses get stuck in the rut of self-sabotage. And they believe that what works for others won't work for them. And I think that's where we decided, well, let's prove it with data. Nurses look at the vitals of their patients and they say, oh, look at that. Their sugar's lower. I did my job. I know what to do. And they know for themselves how to, work with their vitals. We show that if you go to that class that your hospital offers, if you go to the Connecticut Workforce Retreat, that we will show you on a data on your dashboard that that changes your sleep. It changed your restoration score for the next day. It actually changed the way you breathed for 48 hours. And so for me, I think nurses need to make more of a science of their own well-being. Nurses at
Mm,
their core are not artists. They're creators, but they're scientific creators. They went into this knowing that there were roadmaps to healing. And I
yeah.
think many of the nurse wellness programs we put out there, and I've delivered them, people hire me to go in and give a worn out to wild day, but it doesn't come with the science, the measurement that nurses are used to believe. Nurses are cynical. That's why they're so
Yeah.
trustworthy. You can't fool a nurse. So
That's right.
let's not fool her. So that's what I believe. That's
I
what I
love that. Thank you so much, Tanya. Is anyone else seeing the disconnect between having programs and resources in place and seeing real impact for nurses?
I'll make a comment. So again, thank you for allowing me to participate in this discussion today. And I think, Tanya, you're right. In many ways, I also believe that during some of those opportunities for education, we're not always providing what is truly needed in a nursing workday. Like, what is that nursing environment look like? What type of patient are they taking care of? What does the environment look like that they're working in? We generally start to think of wellness as, oh, I need to go have a spa day. Oh, I need to go get a chair massage or a hand massage. And we're not thinking of those little things of, as I'm walking down the hall, let me take some deep breaths in through my nose and out through my mouth in order to try to help calm my system. So I do feel like sometimes we're taught these more grand ideas of self care versus thinking of the little things that we could do to manage our day.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Torrey. And I want to kind of transition a little bit into approaches that are not working because when programs exist but impact is limited, we have to look at the system, right? And not intentions of the individual nurse. So, Dr. Stacy, from a leadership perspective, where do healthcare systems unintentionally undermine nurse wellness, even when intentions are good? But where do you see that it's undermined?
I think in leadership, I wouldn't say undermined, Wendy, but I think understanding, as like Dr. Tori Martha said, is where that capacity lies. What does well-being even look like to our stakeholders? Some of them don't understand. So we have to be very vigilant and do our due diligence to say, well, this is what we mean, whether we really allow our nurses to take their 15-minute breaks in addition to the 30-minute breaks, because that never happens. Or if it is, it's a quick bathroom break. Can you imagine being an ICU nurse right now with the level of flu and pneumonias we have in the state of Connecticut right now going on? A lot of them aren't getting breaks at all, or even can't even have time to go to the restroom. So it's really about painting these pictures for our key stakeholders in any organization that you're in, and really going through and explaining to them, this is what we mean, this is how it visually looks like, this is whether, like Dr. Troy said, it doesn't have to be the massages or really a big expense, but they just really need a lot of time for themselves. They really need the support and resources from a wellness coach, or what are the and most importantly, ask the nurses, what does well-being look like to you, and how would you want that exuded in the workplace? How can we better improve ourselves? So it's really having that dialogue, painting the picture, and really getting those key questions in order for us to really support our nurses in the workforce in the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, personalized nurse wellness. I love the way that I love
Mhm.
the way that sounds. Dr. Tina, I'm coming over to you. What is workforce data telling us about nurse wellness that we're not fully acting on right now?
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Wendy. And again, so privileged to be here with everybody and loving the chat. You guys are all in it. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like there's so many experts on here as well, so can't wait to continue to hear from you all. The data is showing it that there's a disconnect, right? And in taking it upstream, the whole model needs to be flipped.
Mhm.
The fact, and this is way up, guys, so sorry, but the fact that we're not a reimbursable service in healthcare is a contributing factor to a lot of the realities of how we are socialized, sometimes bullied into believing we can take a break or that we can't call out sick, or that we can't have lunch. The other piece I also see is that, um, I mean, the data, right, from a data perspective, 35% of new grads are leaving the workforce,
Mhm.
right? 35%, and in less than a year and a half. We had seen those numbers around 20% in 1 to 2 years.
Is that
Um,
national data or Connecticut data?
national.
Ooh,
Yeah, right. So, and then we're seeing that there's this concern of a shortage, but there's still lots of people who hold their license that don't want to work because it's
Mhm.
not a benefit to them, right? It's hurting their body. And that's I see the other pieces where the model needs to change. And in that, nurses, we are the largest work group in healthcare. If we organize and mobilize, we can really drive a lot of these changes. And one thing I will also plant is that there is um, the Nursing Code of Ethics, Provision 1. Make it applicable to nursing first and foremost.
Mm.
Nursing has been again socialized to be the martyr. No, we don't have to die, right? Taking care of our patients, we should not have contributing factors negatively impacting our health because of our role. There should be safety pay then, right? Hazard pay involved
Yeah.
in our profession. So yeah, I can keep going on in this path.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
That's
just
that's the data piece.
yeah, a quick follow-up. Now, what's the risk of ignoring all this and
Oh,
kind of moving forward with,
yeah,
how things are?
yeah.
What's the risk?
And we see that too, the retention, right? Retention, lack of engagement. We have turnover. So hospitals and healthcare systems and organizations are paying for this, right? We're seeing that there's so much more being spent on programming to do it, where if the upfront investment was made, it would reduce those expenses and improve at the back end and improve the outcomes as well.
Love that. Dr. Stacy?
I was just gonna tap into the risk part, as Dr. Tina said, is that we got to be mindful of our patients. Yeah, we know the finances and the costs and stuff, but the patient outcomes, and most importantly for the nurses, is errors. When we look at the quality
Mhm.
perspective, if our nurses aren't well, do we think medical errors or any type of errors that can pose as a risk to patients are going to just they're probably most likely going to increase. So we really got to look at it at a holistic approach and really look at best outcomes for the patient, but also really reducing the risk of harm and really reducing our errors that we're having in the workplaces today as well.
Absolutely. Thank you
and
for adding
those are
that.
so expensive, like literally,
That's
literally
a big
costing
litigation. That's a big legal thing. I
millions,
mean,
millions.
millions. It's
One of
just
our hospitals that is considering this is in Texas, and they had huge, huge, huge issues with patient falls on a
Mhm.
post-surge. And they really felt that they did their own kind of investigation. And they didn't say it was nurse burnout, it was nurse fatigue. What the heck is the difference? And for them, the nurses weren't getting enough sleep because they were working too many shifts, or they were doing, but the issue is all of that is well-being. How much we sleep, how well we feel balanced, how much time we get off to do the things that make us feel human and heart-led. And I am so excited to be able to show that if we intervene with inspiration and, like you had said, who was it, Dr. Tori, you had said, let's give them the things they can do to stay alert so that there aren't falls, that make them feel seen, heard, appreciated. It's so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Tanya, for adding that. And I just want to go over to Dr. Maria from Education to Practice Pipeline. How early does the nurse wellness problem begin? And what are we not preparing nurses for before they actually enter the workforce?
Before I tackle that, I just wanted to point out that we've talked about all these things and they all boil down to staffing, no? Like if we don't have enough staffing, nurses can always feel that they can't take breaks, that they can't take the 15 minutes. And I think a lot of the times hospitals have wellness programs in sessions, but the nurse at the bedside can't go to all these things. And while we think that, they need to learn simple things to help them, they can't go to learn them and to employ them when they're feeling under the gun to have the patients that they have. So I think until we have, until we really look at the patient acuity, until we give nurses the help that they need to step away from the bedside when they're not feeling that they can handle it, to handle the high acuity, we're not going to be able to solve the problem. I remember, I don't know when it transitioned. I remember being at the bedside and always having a break and having lunch. It was a priority. And then I want to say probably in early 2000, became, even around my own coworkers, something that shifted where people weren't leaving. They kind of felt compelled to stay at the bedside, to not leave and go have a break. So I think that staffing it is. Now, for in terms of school, I think that the state, COVID hasn't helped the preparedness of students coming into a college situation. So they come unprepared for the rigor of it. Maybe in the freshman year, they do well. Once they start taking the sciences, it becomes very, very apparent that they struggle. Some of them struggle a lot. They have a lot of outside competing responsibilities that really not only financial but maybe family that interfere with their ability to cope. And a lot of the times I see that students in our university have a hard time reaching out. Reaching out for help, have a hard time saying, you know what, this is happening to me. I need help. The School of Nursing, for instance, is addressing this in several ways. We've begun to, because nursing here is an upper division major, so students don't really get into the nursing major until junior year, but they're here at the university and we have a risk of losing them to, low grades or financial difficulties or mental health issues. So we've begun a mentorship program for them and trying to teach them like every step of the way, like bringing in professionals to talk to them about certain things, trying to teach them how to recognize that they're needing help and offering the help. Like the university itself has advisors from the very beginning, and then the nursing students have advisors, so they have like a two-way system. We have the university advisors, the nursing advisors, and we have a student engagement specialist that addresses the needs of those students. And then when they get into the major, I think it's very hard for students once they begin nursing. I know we think it's a badge of courage to say that a BSN program is the hardest program that you'll ever take. And in reality, for some students, it becomes even harder because they haven't learned to prioritize, they haven't learned to organize their time, and they don't have the coping skills to be able to deal with some of the difficult situations. So in the nursing program, we continue to have a dedicated person that reaches out to students who struggle. But, in preparation for this panel, I've been reading and talking more. And while for hospital employees, Johnson and Johnson has, advised that that the American Foundation has a program to establish at the hospital level for nurses to reach out, and it's all anonymous when they're feeling that their mental health is impacting.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that we could do here, like that we should think about. How do we begin to address early on? It's all anonymous, so students don't have to disclose. They fill out a questionnaire and then it just bumps it up the line to recognize. But I think it's really important for it, for instance, for every course to embed the responsibility of being responsible for the patient, to doing what you need to do, but also at the same time to step back and think like, how am I feeling? Do I need help? And it's okay to need help. And it's not, it's not it's nothing less. I think we hear a lot of burnout and it always seems to point that there's something wrong with us. when in reality it's the
Yeah.
system that's failing us, not
Yeah.
the fact that it's us. It's like, how can anybody continue to function at that way? And that happens here in nursing school too. We have students have clinical, they have lab, they have maybe they have 3 courses and each of them is having a test this week, and the student is having a hard time prioritizing what works. And then at the same time, they want to have, they're in college, they want to have fun. And if they
Absolutely.
they give into
Absolutely.
one, they may jeopardize the other. So I think that that's one of the things that we need to teach early on in college is how do you manage all these and do well, but how do you reach out for help?
Thank you so much, Dr. Maria. And Dr. Tori, I would love for you to jump in there and just how does this show up in practice when they come over to you following, uh,
Yeah. One of the things I was going to comment on, and I think is still what happens, but even I remember when I was being onboarded many moons ago, was that you're orientating to your team and they're making sure you have lunch, right? They're making sure you get to lunch. And the comment they're then making is, make sure you take your lunch now because when you're off on your own, you're not going to get lunch. And you kind of joke about it and you laugh about it. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing? We're setting them up right there, right? So we have to do a better job of that precepting part of it and that onboarding part of it to flip our dialogue. And it comes from leadership. So I take ownership and responsibility of that as well. Is that, am I helping to ensure that when my team is assisting to onboard a new employee, that they are ensuring that that person not only gets a break during their orientation, that they are taking their break all of the time. And I have to do a better job of it role modeling it myself. So I used to check my emails 24/7, 7 days a week, 365. And I said to myself, my gosh, what am I doing to myself? I really need to stop. And so now I don't check my emails on Sunday. That is a hard thing to do sometimes. I
Yeah.
had a lot of panic and anxiety over that. It seems like such a little thing, but after 4 weeks of doing that, I felt better. So I do think that we need to reevaluate how we're doing that initial onboarding and ensuring that the wellness is really embedded from the beginning so that it is something that will then therefore be sustainable over time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I
Can
love
I
that.
add
Thank
to
you.
that role modeling piece, Wendy?
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
would round. I used to oversee a large healthcare system, and I would round, get with the nurses, let them know about open positions, talk about professional development. You should apply. You've been in charge nurse this long. Move up career ladder, nurse manager. And their response would be, well, we see what you go through and we see how much you invest in this position you're in and how much you're here late at night, have to come in on the weekend, and there we don't want that, Dr. Benzel. So it's like that role modeling piece, but also gives you that time to pause, reflect and kind of say, oh, wow, they have a valid point and really kind of shift how you practice yourself too and really pay attention to that piece. Like we're probably a product of a little bit of what Dr. Tori was explaining because on how that orientation piece and how it's really rolled out and kicked off. And we all can identify with what she said. Get your breaks now because after orientation, here you go. Try to manage and time management and prioritize all those skills come in and you really have to have that a lot of time and learn that piece but really gives us a time to reflect on how we really and that's a well-being for leadership as well. We talk about bedside but bedside all the way up as to a chief nurse. How does well-being look like for the CNL and your nurse managers and your directors? Are they getting the sleep? Are they really taking time for themselves?
I
It
feel
definitely
like
starts at the top. It starts at the top.
Mhm.
And I wanna kind of shift a little bit, and I want to bring Tina in because what we're really discussing here is playing out in real time, right? So in New York, nurses are striking right now, right, around
Mhm.
staffing ratios, safety, and burnout. And Dr. Tina, what lessons could Connecticut take from this moment before similar pressures escalate here in our state?
Thank you for that, and thank you for those who have also put this question in the chat, and I put some comments in there. But I think the lesson learned is what we're also, I think, seeing at the national level is that nursing is utilizing its voice and numbers to finally say enough is enough. And so there's the lesson learned of being able to have nursing at the table and engage in meaningful dialogue and conversations and strategies, solution strategies to think of consensus, right? Because unfortunately, with the current state of the healthcare reimbursement model, the economy, and all the other areas that um, we're being traumatized daily in the nation through. Nursing is that kind of safety net, right, for society. And so we are feeling it everywhere. Um, there's the need to ensure that in that we're at the table, we're part of the brainstorming, but also that we are recognized and valued as the professionals that we are, and our contributions are really valued. In terms of what direct impacts we could also perhaps anticipate in Connecticut as well, particularly since Connecticut just became a compact license state, right? So New York City is a state of emergency, and they might pull out the call of nurses, we need you, and we're going to pay X amount.
Mhm.
Now that Connecticut is a compact license state, those nurses who have that, it'd be easier for them to, right, go down to New York and work. So there's potential that there could be um, that impact for it rippling into our staffing. The other piece of this too is that, and I have to thank my nurse colleague, Andrea Dazel, is that what's not being focused on as well is our vulnerable populations and also our vulnerable or our nurses with different abilities in this whole process. So that's also a key piece is that unfortunately healthcare is very ableist. And so there's this other population as well as those who have different diagnoses or ability levels. They can also be impacted by the current staffing fluctuations excuse me, in New York City, but also apparently anywhere because they're predicting another wave of this flu coming through as well. So it's a
Mm,
lot to watch. It'll be really interesting to see how they continue to navigate and are able to have productive conversations that move towards an agreeable an agreement that both sides can live with.
yeah, absolutely. Anyone want to add to that regarding what's going on in New York right now? Go ahead, Dr. Maria.
I was just going to say that I hope that Connecticut nurses really support what their, nurses in New York are doing because I think that this would impact how nurses function here. Like what is, we're in it. Like we're not striking, but for nurses here, whatever concessions they get, whatever they're fighting for can only benefit nurses here. And to cross the picket line and not support your own nurses. And, people have to do what their conscience leads them to do. But I think that, we've been fighting the fight for a long time here in Connecticut. And I feel that this is a time to support, not to undermine our New York colleagues.
But I also think it's really a time that just demonstrates, and maybe as it should, that healthcare is a business enterprise in the United States. And
Hmm.
money talks, and investors will float money to pay quadruple salaries to nurses. And no matter how righteous you feel, and if you have children to raise and other bills to pay, you begin to rise above your own principles. I know that sounds horrible, but that is the reality of a system as ours is. And so when I came back into the healthcare system to make change happen, to me, people were saying, Tanya, it has to be, you have to talk to the CFO. And I'm like, I don't like them. And they say, no, you got to go to the CFO and then the COO. The CNO can get you there. The CNO is not going to make the decisions here because it has to be proven that it's making money and saving money. And that at first was horrifying for me and my team and those that are involved in Power Up that are actually listening to this call. We were like, oh, we are selling out. We are selling, but we're not. We're giving nurses the power to create a career, a job, workplace, and a sense of self-wellness that actually can be converted into the almighty dollar for a hospital. And
Absolutely.
that's so important because when I saw the salaries that were being offered, I was irate. It should be illegal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Tanya. I really appreciate you adding that perspective. Um,
Reality. Sorry.
yes, no, thank you. Thank you. And I want to transition into what would it look like if we took nurse wellness seriously in the state? And I want to bring it over to Dr. Stacy. If nurse wellness was treated like patient safety or quality outcomes, what would units need to do tomorrow in order to exemplify that?
Treated like unit outcomes to exemplify. Sorry, one more time, Wendy.
So, if nurse wellness was treated like patient safety or
Mhm.
quality outcomes, what would units need to do tomorrow?
Hmm. Definitely have pipelines for creating quality dashboards and tracking. Um, it's always good to tell our story, but you need data to support your story. That would definitely be something we need to input tomorrow because there's some gaps in that in certain organizations. Communication's essential. So I think from, like we talked about, bottom up from your bedside nurses all the way to the CEO, CNO, that communication strategy and really being able to be a visionary and articulating what we want the vision to be and how we communicate that is the essential tool as well for our outcomes. And when you think of safety, you think of, how are we, treating our patients, providing care to our patients? Are we culturally competent? Or are we culturally sensitive? Can we be competent in someone else's culture or be more cultural sensitive? And when you think about all those breakdowns from ethics to communication, collaboration, we want to make sure we have that holistic approach too. If we're treating wellness and well-being for nursing, we need to have a holistic approach to that as well to drive those outcomes. What's the vision of well-being in nursing? If we're going to track it and have the support and resources as we do with providing patient care and looking at those outcomes, we need to do the same on the well-being pipeline.
Absolutely. And I know we discussed leadership wellness because it starts from the top up. I'm hearing a lot of that. And Dr. Tori, what are some things that organizations need to consider when thinking about nurse wellness for leaders such as yourself?
Yeah, I think if for sure that it starts with some education. I know that I was not educated about self-wellness in the workplace until I went into a leadership position, which already felt a little late. And so I think that we really need to also have some personal accountability. So, what is my job to take care of myself and creating that why? Why do I feel it is important for me to ensure my own well being? And I think that sometimes we don't have that why, and we really need to discuss why. And when I think of it or talk to my employees or my staff members or myself, why? Because I'm important, because I am worthy, because I deserve it. And sometimes that sounds a little, oh, I shouldn't be saying that. I shouldn't, this is about them. This is about my patient. This is about, no, I'm important. And so, what I want to say to everybody on this call is you're important. You are worthy. You are deserving. And you need to ensure that you are reflecting on that and acting upon that. So, there's those two pieces in my mind. I need to support them from a leadership perspective, but I also need to help them to know that they are worthy of self care.
Yes, I love that. And I love the hearts going up. But and you said that was so much power. Love it. I love it. Tanya, I want to come over to you. Where do, in terms of like culture, race, and psychosocial realities, where do nurse wellness initiatives kind of fall short?
Everywhere. But I think first I want to say that To get well-being to be an asset, not a liability on the P&L ledger of a hospital is where we need to be immediately. And I love Tina's ideas, and I'm sorry about that. And I certainly, Tori, your stuff is just resonating in my heart. So to move over to where equity and cultural sensitivity, I think it's about working on, and someone said this earlier, well-being is communication. It pivots around communication. It pivots around our ability to talk to each other as human beings, to disagree with each other. I mean, let's just look at it now. We can talk about nursing, we can talk about immigration. As long as we can talk to each other and recognize the inherent dignity in somebody else, then we can move forward to get to a well-being space. And so for me, yes, there is huge. I mean, I go from hospitals like here in Miami and Jackson, which is, I don't know the exact number, but it certainly seems like more than half ethnic representation, to places in Wisconsin, where to be Black or Latino is not to be a registered nurse. And so, wow, I come out, I say it right out loud, and I open up the floor to those discussions. And that's well-being, Wendy, and that's what we're trying to work in. We've got I'm going to be a little self-promotional, but it's taken us years. We've got retrain your brain, rewire your thinking, and reset your life. And rewiring your thinking is about rewiring how you judge people, how you put yourself out, your self-worth. So much of that stuff that we have, conflict, communication breakdown, failure to thrive as nurses, comes because we don't feel good. I mean, I do these surveys of nurses, and in one survey I just did, like 70% felt that they were morbidly obese, and it was an emotional eating pattern. Okay, so guys, we just need to be direct. We need to know that we share dysfunction and brokenness with every race, with every socioeconomic nurse, whether they have no degree or a PhD. We share the basics of well-being, and inclusion and dignity to me is everything.
Yes, absolutely. And Tina, Dr. Tina, I know you want to add something to this conversation.
Yeah, I saw her jumping. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it just expands to humanity, right? And there's just so much opportunity for us to recall that that is the one thing we do all have in common, is that we are of the human race. Um, and the other piece to wellness as well that I always try to connect is we also need to take care of Mother Earth, right?
Mm.
Like there has to be this understanding of our harm that we are contributing to the environment. Um, but a lot of it, I feel a lot of the wellness issues stem, we talked about the capitalism, but I think it's also, right, the pivot to not recognizing us as human beings. Um, and we've seen it with patients, but also I feel like as a profession, right, we again, as I spoke to earlier, it was okay for us to be martyrs. And what this new wave of uh, nurses were entering the workforce are saying is, no, I'm not doing that no more. And I applaud them. But what is then happening is that they're getting this bad reputation of, oh, these new nurses, they don't have resiliency. I was like, okay, these new nurses have survived COVID, right? And all the other stuff that has happened. Perhaps it's not them, as we've all mentioned, it's perhaps the system that needs to change instead of us, be wired to dysfunction. And in this as well, is the need for the support from the boards of these institutions, the executive leadership, um, and similar to how many of the Connecticut state hospitals and organizations went on their high reliability journey, right? Like there should be a wellness journey that all institutions undergo. And I'll also just add in that journey, there also is probably an opportunity for some revisiting and re-education on emotional intelligence. Because I think that's another component that is lacking in the world and in our workplace right now as well.
Yeah, and it really speaks to making wellness standard of care, right? And we all understand the power of that. And that's what we're trying to really move the needle on wellness, making it standard of care. So like you said, in every institution, it's the same. And what I'm hearing is, Tanya, you said communication. Tina, I think you said communication. I think it's really about connecting or connection, right? When we don't take care of ourselves, we're not well, we're stressed, we're burned out, it's hard to connect. And if you're not connected, people don't feel seen, heard, or valued. So I think we really have to think about that in terms of retention and just wellness in general, from leaders to nurses providing direct care. So
Wendy, I just got off the phone with a young man who has done research on this. In many circles, it would be considered a silly little app where it buzzes and sends love when you need it. Because our phone makes us feel disconnected, our jobs make us feel disconnected, our family units. But this is, I'm sending up a flare. I'm a nurse. I just lost a patient, and 50 nurses from around the world can
love
send
it.
you love, and the whole phone vibrates. And you know you're not alone, because the worst thing about being a person, but what I've discovered in nursing, and it's with doctors too, is feeling like you are alone in those critical, awful moments of
Yes.
losing a patient, of COVID, of your own distress. And there's nowhere to turn except drugs, alcohol, suicide. And we see those rising in these populations at an alarming rate. So connection, thank you, Wendy. That is such a powerful word.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to bring Dr. Maria in, just thinking of, because, student nurses, that's really our pipeline. If you can tell us two things that we built like an infrastructure into schools of nursing, what would you suggest in order to get students from school to practice and allow them to stay in practice and be well or value their well-being?
I think
What are
it's
two things?
I wanted to say that I think it's starting early to incorporate, these thoughts, this is not, one of the things that we're doing here is communication. I think communication at all levels. How do you communicate during difficult conversations, during when you're having you need a timeout, for yourself. So one of the things we're doing here is incorporating a lot of using virtual reality to put students in a situation where they learn those skills. At the same time, that we need to stop with this martyrdom that we are going to go to work and no matter what, we're going to show up and we're going to show up sick and we're going to show up unwell, and respect people when they say, I can't do it and I can't come in. And I know as a faculty, when students call out for an exam, people, we are like, oh my God, they're missing an exam. The flares go up. But I think that we, especially here at the School of Nursing, are more and more recognizing that sometimes we need to shift from that old a way of thinking that no matter what, one of the things I say to my students or used to say, like, you can't take the exam and when you fail, say, I had a problem. I think we need to say, I have a problem, I can't take the exam. That's savable. But to do something and then say, oh, I shouldn't have done it because I wasn't myself. I think we need to empower people to do that. And I think School of Nursing need to recognize that, empower students to be able to self advocate for the fact that they need, the time that they can't take the exam, and it's okay. And even though it's going to be a burden on faculty, it's okay if the student has to take the exam a week later. It's better to do that and save that and then show to students that everything is recoverable. Everything, there's very few things that are life or death. And in nursing school, taking an exam a week later is not. But I feel like what can help here is beginning to show. And I wanted to say to Dr. Tori that one of the things that happens when people get elevated to positions is that we never think, are they, they were a great nurse, they're a great team leader, and so we think they will be a great manager. But
Mhm.
you know what? That doesn't always translate. And so then they, and so sometimes people think like with me, I'm into this, I'm into that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But I'm doing that as a choice, not because I'm being forced to. And sometimes people say, oh, they can't live up to what all the things that you're doing, but you're doing that as a choice. No, like Dr. Tina too, like she's, into a lot of things, but I'm sure that those are choices of hers and she's made them. And so I think that when we put a nursing somebody, we elevate them into the role of manager, we don't train them to recognize when somebody's suffering, when somebody needs a break. We just, I think like being a manager in a unit, I always say it's like the hardest job that you'll ever have. You have
Yes.
people under you that you have to worry about and please, and people over you that you have to, you have an agenda and that needs to be translated. And if that doesn't happen, you're not going to be in that role very long because let's face it, that's how work, it's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business. But I think that if they were trained, they would be able to recognize when their unit needs time out, when it's time to go, if a patient dies, to give that nurse time to, recoup. And it's okay if a new nurse needs an extra 3 weeks of orientation to extend it and not be a stigma. Oh my God, we have to extend the orientation. And I think that that happens a lot. And that's why nurses leave. And I think the bottom line is teaching our younger nurses to communicate. I get a lot of emails from students sometimes when they have a tough assignment, they don't know what to say, how to communicate. I've been talking to the manager and we work through steps. What do you do? How do you do it so that you're protecting yourself, protecting the patient? And so teaching students how to do that, but then also having managers who are willing to, step up and take care of their nurses because at the end of the day, it is, I mean, having been a manager in a unit, the revolving door is tiresome on you and on the staff that you work. Eventually, everybody is burned out
Yeah.
from picking up the load of. Or I remember one year, I think probably we had 4 orientees a month for an entire year
Yeah.
when the cycle of leaving jobs, when we had sign-on bonuses, people would come for 2 years and leave, two
Mhm.
years and leave. It was a cycle and it wore down the nurses. But I think that if we educate and support early on, and if we teach students early on to recognize, to ask for help and not stigmatize them, I think that we would be in a better place. I think that it's going to cost money from the hospital position, but at the end,
Yeah.
like
Yes.
it's going to be reaping its benefits to create a cohesive unit where everybody feels supported and where people, when I was a nurse,
I want to, oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I wanted to bring Tina in and then we're gonna do our lightning round. Go
when
ahead.
I was
Go
a
ahead.
nurse on the bed, on the bedside night, and they would have all these programs, and I would say, "Oh, only the clipboard people get to attend because we can't leave the bedside." So all these programs set for us, we couldn't leave to go and take advantage of them because we couldn't leave our patients. So maybe rethink when you have programs, when you have all of the, like somebody needs to come in and relieve those nurses so they can attend. I mean,
Absolutely. Thank you
know,
so much for that. Dr. Tina, come on
Yeah.
in.
Thank you. Two quick points. I applaud your awareness and advocacy, Dr. Maria, related to embracing the students where they're at and modeling for them how to navigate that. As I mentioned in the chat earlier, pedagogy needs to change, right? Like how we teach, but also how we assess. I think also speaking our truth and being transparent around it to help bring awareness, but also to reduce those stigmas. So, two things that I always share in forums that I'm happy and proud to share is that one, Tina is in therapy. Tina uses therapy to help her navigate all the multiple hats Dr. Maria talked about that Tina is wearing. And I've shared that with my staff. I've also been transparent with my staff and anybody when Tina does something wrong or when Tina messes up, right? There's this idea that, oh, we had to be perfect. We're humans. Again, nothing is perfect that we do. We're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. I've had 3 patient errors. I've shared those with my staff when I've had them. I've had times where I've told them, I am stressed, so I'm going to take 2 personal days. Do not, who's covering. This is who you call, and then I will be back. Um, so I think, again, to try to reframe the narrative as the conversations have been in the chat, we need to model that. We need to support that when we see that from our students, our peers, our leaders. And then organizations need to continue to embed that, right? Like if there's not an EAP program that you're aware of, find out how you can get connected to one and what other resources available to you. But there needs to be this constant socialization of these realities of being a human and being a nurse who's also human, and how to balance that in the world and the work that we live in.
Absolutely. And I want to do a lightning round. And Dr. Stacey, I'm coming right to you. I want you to wrap your statement up in here. So, if Connecticut were to lead the nation in nurse wellness, what must happen next? And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Stacey, since you had your hand up.
If we were to lead the nation, oh, I'm sorry, I have a the training role beginning. Sorry, that's a word.
Real life.
Where do we? So, Wendy, one more time. If we were to lead the nation in well-being,
In nurse wellness, what needs to happen next after this discussion? Everything we've heard here, everything that's going on in the news, what needs to be the next step?
so after digesting it all, because it is a lot, after digesting it all and really giving your time to, have that time to think. We have to allot our time sometimes to think and not react so much. So after we allot our time to think and think about um, what's the strategy, how do we move into the next step in the next phase of nurse well-being, I definitely want to continue to talk about hearing the voices of the nurses. And I think my comment when Dr. Maria and Dr. Tina were talking about is we can't just look at the acute care space. We also look out and think about where our nurses are today and where are the magnitude of where they're practicing from advanced practice all the way down to community health centers and treating those type of patients in certain communities and community health centers, whether they're in ambulatory surgery or ambulatory care, whether they're, working in a private practice office. Where are our nurses and how does well-being look for them? Because it's not in just hospitals. Hospitals, we use that dialogue a lot in the hospital and the care. They're not all in the hospital. They don't want to be in the hospital. They're in dialysis clinics and dialysis centers. They're all over. So how does well-being look for them? Taking this all in, as I go back to what I said initially, taking this all in, really strategizing and looking at, what's the vision? We know they're here, here, and here. Where are our nurses? How does it look like for them? Really get from them their voices. What does nurse well-being look like for them? What will help them as a leader that since, maybe the decision maker of certain these things or approve the next steps of where we go with this? What's our ask? What's our
Yeah.
vision? And where's our step on implementation of this? Where do we execute? And what's that goal and outcome? Now that we have all these initiatives in place and things to support our nurses, is that the outcome? We really got to be strategic and really look at how we're gonna implement and drive this, but really learn what's the need and the ask and what the nurses really want is key. Because we can be off. How do
I
we
love that.
reassess and know that if we're on target or not? Like
Yeah.
Dr. Tori said, it may not be the massage chairs and
Right.
Nurses Week comes and now it's flowers and now pizza parties and things all over. But that's not it. Maybe
Yeah.
it's not that. And our key stakeholders will say, well, we can't give more money. We can't give raises. Maybe they're not asking for a raise. They just want to go to the bathroom once a shift.
Yeah.
Or they just want to, could I have 30 minutes to eat? How does it look like on whatever the spaces where our nurses are, whether they're in psych, OBGYN, inpatient, outpatient. We are a very broad profession on where we practice. So we want to be also intentional and inclusive when we do roll this out.
Yes, and the Connecticut Nurse Wellness Project, we are spending our foundational year really listening to nurses, talking to nurses to really get a better understanding of what they
Yeah,
want.
yeah. That's
So,
the data. That's the
yeah,
resources we need.
absolutely. And the survey, right?
And
That's
that survey,
another data.
Dr. Maria said, get you
Yes.
an anonymous survey.
Yeah.
See what those needs are.
So, Dr. Tori, I want to come to you. What needs to happen next for us to really lead nurse wellness?
So I think a lot of the themes that we've heard is we need to band together as a nursing workforce, right? We need to see everybody as human. A tangible thing that I can think of is that, we have to do reviews every year, and we have to make goals for every year. Why isn't there a wellness goal? There should be a goal for wellness. And how are we ensuring as the leader that we're helping that employee to meet that wellness goal? So I think that we each individually need a roadmap for ourselves personally. I think we need to ensure we're not always pushing it on somebody else. What is somebody else going to do for me? What are you going to do for you as we kind of move forward? But then also having that safe space where everybody's banding together as a group of nurses and helping to support in whatever environment they are working in.
Love that. Thank you so much. And Dr. Tina, coming to you.
Yeah, mine is from a 50,000 foot view, and I feel Connecticut needs to really recognize and then support nursing as an economic infrastructure for the state. And in doing that, have appropriated funds so that wellness innovation can occur from all these experts who are living this day in and day out, right? And also, it's okay to celebrate, the failures and talk about those. We got to talk about those too. But then there's the ability to empower us as professionals to lead this transition. So that's my recommendation.
Love it. Thank you so much. And Dr. Maria.
Well, I think that I'm going to second what everybody has said, but also I think that schools really need to begin to incorporate, um, wellness programs, not only wellness programs, but to teach nursing students that they deserve to the minimum, go to the bathroom, have a lunch break, be out if they're not feeling well, be supported when they have a bad situation. I think that needs to happen. I think that right now we focus on resilience, but nurses can be resilient and then they go to work and their first job, they just are unprepared for, what's going to happen in there. And we think as professionals, as educators, that we're preparing them to deal with patients, but sometimes the patient's probably the easiest part of it is navigating the culture of the unit and standing up for yourself, respectfully and appropriately every time that you feel that you're not being heard or respected. So I think that trying to incorporate all those qualities into nursing school, I know that we have, a lot, from the time that we went to nursing school to now, so much more has happened, and so much more needs to happen in nursing school. But I think that at the very least, I think that we owe our students the ability, the right to be educated and to hear about how do you cope when situations are not. What are the tools that you give them a toolbox so that they have tools that they can employ when situations arise versus being the first thing you want to do is leave. How do we change the situation? Because sometimes the grass is not green on the other side. It's just, you just didn't water your own grass. So I think that if we encourage that, and people will leave and nurses will leave because, younger nurses want to see something different, and that's okay. And then we need to respect that. But if they're leaving because we are not creating a safe workplace, and then we need to figure out how to change that. And I think that until we do that, I think we're just going to see probably even shorter periods than 6 months, done with
Absolutely.
orientation and out the door.
Yeah, and I think even in nursing school, we have to, talk about resilience. How do we help, nurses build capacity, right? How do we help them really build that capacity? And I'm going to come to you, Tanya. What needs to happen next? Oh, you're on mute.
I've been sitting here and reading the webinar chat and seeing all kinds of wonderful words like connection, humanity, kindness. Caritas is like my new discovery for my own life. But what most boardrooms would, whether they believed it or not, roll their eyes at. And there's a saying that is so true. We can't change what we can't measure. And we can put everything we want into place for nurse well-being. And we can right now, I'm sorry, even if you're 18 years old, being a martyr is cool. I know that people say, no, young people don't want to do this, but young people still have this sense that people who make the most money and people, unless they're YouTube producers, they work really hard. And I don't want to work that hard. And I think, I don't know if that's exactly true. I work with a lot of young people and they like being martyrs too. See how hard I'm working? Don't I deserve more? Until we can demonstrate and measure for them individually that martyrdom kills us. Martyrdom takes the joy out of life. No one has said joy this entire conversation, but I was with a couple hundred nurses down at Jackson, and at the end of it, they said, I felt joy in the room. And that to me was one of my biggest success moments. And I think until martyrdom becomes the quest for joy, and until we can measure how to get there and measure the impact on what happens when we get there, both on the individual nurse and on the system that they work in, whether they're a home health aide or whether they're a VP of a hospital, then I don't think we're going to get sustainable change. And so I think we all need to work together and have our little pieces of excellence, which we all do, put them into a model and say, look, this can be measured, this can be changed.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your contribution. So, as we bring today's conversation to a close, I want to thank you all of our contributors, for your leadership, your honesty, your willingness to name both challenges and possibilities. There's still possibilities. Your perspective across policy, workforce, education, practice, and national wellness advocacy are exactly what's required right now at this moment. So I want to thank you as well, everyone who joined today. Your presence, your engagement in the chat was awesome. The questions you shared in advance really helped shape this conversation in a meaningful way. So what's really clear here is that nurse wellness is not one organization's responsibility. It truly is shared. It's a shared commitment that spans across leadership, systems, education, and practice. So today is not the end of this conversation. It truly is the beginning of a coordinated statewide effort. In the coming days, you'll receive a follow-up email with the Connecticut Nurse Wellness Project, the next steps, including the statewide survey that we mentioned, an opportunity to stay engaged throughout our foundational year, which is 2026. And if you're interested in being involved, whether it's sharing your perspective, participating in future convenings such as today, or contributing to working groups, we need you. We want you to be involved because we all have to be together, like Tori said, band together in order to move the needle on nurse wellness to make nurse wellness standard of care. So on behalf of the Connecticut Nurse Wellness Project, WinWell, and the Stress Blueprint, thank you, thank you, thank you for being part of this important moment. Together, we are moving closer to making nurse wellness a standard of care. So we look forward to continuing this work with you and reconvening here next year so we can continue the conversation. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you all to my fellow panelists as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.